Hello. Tonight I'd like to talk a little bit about cleanup crews, just in terms of, what I've found, what I've tried, and what seems to be the most useful. Starting with snails, I would say that I've tried Astrea, I've tried Trocus, I've tried turbos, I've tried margarita snails, and a few others in between. I've also tried a couple of different varieties of turbos. Um, from my personal observations, here's what I've learned. The Astrea snails generally do a decent job in terms of cleaning up glass, doing a little bit of work on the rocks, chewing on some stuff. The downside to them is that they do not right themselves in any way, shape, or form. They're probably the most easily flipped over one that I've seen. Even the turbos can right themselves better than the Astreas. The other issue that I have with the Astreas is that they are the worst snail to have in terms of individuals who like to use the self-acclimation method. Now, if you're not familiar with the self-acclimation method, what that is, it's where you take a snail, out of the bag, you stick it just above the water line in your tank, and let the snail attach itself, and then when the snail is ready to go, it will just decide on its own when it's ready to go. It'll go into the tank, and that helps prevent some of the more trickier acclimation methods that some people do. Some people are doing the drip method, some people are doing, the 3 hour plus acclimations, and quite frankly, it's a real pain and a hassle. But anyways, once again, so if you like using the self-acclimation method, Astrea snails, they don't tend to like to attach to the glass. You can sit there and hold them forever, and a lot of times they won't attach. The margarita snails I found were useful for hanging out at the water line and just kind of, feeding off the flow and the nutrients. They also have those cool spiky shells. But for the most part, I didn't really see that much benefit that they provided. Which leaves me with the turbos and the Trocus snails. The turbos, a lot of people are wary of them because, yes, they can bulldoze, they can knock over your rock work, they can knock over your corals if they're not glued down. So if you haven't glued them down, then no, I do not recommend using a turbo snail because you'll end up with corals knocked over. Turbos, particularly if you get the Mexican turbo variety, are probably the most useful. Those things are just algae vacuum cleaners. They can polish up a tank real quick. They will eat some hair algae, and just various other different things. They are also, as the name implies, they're fairly quick for a snail. I've seen mine go around my tank with a 90-gallon tank within the course of about 10 to 15 minutes, which for a snail, that's pretty quick. They do, if they get flipped over, they can be a bit of an issue. But as long as they're not too far from a rock or the glass or whatever, they can usually find a way to reattach themselves. So that leaves me with my personal favorite snail, which is the Trocus snail. The Trocus snail is it's a larger than most of the smaller snails. It's still a lot smaller than turbo, of course. They have the ability to self-right. It's really interesting to watch because they will take their adhesive foot that they have there, the sort of the mucus foot that sticks to things, and they will sit there and they will just kind of shoot it out and stretch it out, and kind of flail around with it until they can grab onto something, and then they'll pull themselves up and over. So it is kind of interesting to watch them do that in terms of righting themselves. They are quick, they are efficient, they're pretty versatile. So in terms of, if I had to pick one snail that would be my go-to, I would say that the Trocus would be top of my list. They readily attach to the glass for self-acclimation. I would say turbos are probably the quickest, but the Trocus are right behind them. They will, generally speaking, if you're doing the self-acclimation method, they will attach themselves to the glass within a few seconds, and you can just let go of them and let them do their thing, and then they're good to go. The Trocus snails also have beautiful shells. They have these sort of I don't know how to describe it, kind of a reddish purple offset with a white spiral colored shell. So you also get something that, even though it's a snail, is rather aesthetically pleasing. So for that reason, again, if I had to pick one snail that I would recommend as far as just being a versatile member of the cleanup crew, good hard worker, doesn't bother anything, can self-right itself, then the Trocus would hands down be my number one pick. That said, however, I would still, especially if you got a larger tank, recommend at least one or two turbos in there, just for, sheer cleaning power. Just make sure, once again, your rock work's pretty stable and your corals are glued down. And that's all I'm going to cover as far as snails right now, and thanks for watching.